Time for the newspaper review. This is where Sally and I look at the stories making headlines around the world. We'll begin with El País. It's reporting that street cleaners in Madrid have reached an agreement to end a 2-week strike, which has led to mountains of rubbish piling up on the streets of the Spanish capital.
Financial Times is reporting a warning from the European Banking Authority. It says decision-making in Europe needs to be streamlined to ensure the industry benefits from the stress tests being carried out on 150 of its top banks.
The Wall Street Journal's big story is the air show in Dubai. Sally's been doing a lot on this as well. This is where Boeing has come out as a big winner in a race for orders. Emirates Airlines, Etihad Airways, Qatar Airways have emerged as the big buyers.
The Guardian carries a report from Amnesty International on the treatment of migrant workers in Qatar, many of whom are building the infrastructure for the 2022 Football World Cup.
On the front page of The Times, the story about Google and Microsoft agreeing on measures that will make it more difficult to search for child abuse images online.
And China Daily says cars in the Chinese city of Lanzhou will only be allowed on the roads on alternate days. An odd-even licence plate restriction has been introduced for 2 months to prevent severe air pollution there.
Quite an experiment, that. Per Wimmer from Wimmer Financial is here to go through the papers. Good to have you with us, Per.
Morning, Per.
Let's talk about El País. Now, initially, this looks like great news. The strike is over. Rubbish on the streets in Spain, in Madrid, is going to be collected. Is this good news?
It is more good news that at least the conflict is solved, but one can't help but feel sympathy for these workers. If you think about it, street cleaning is not exactly the most glamorous job in the world, and these people are making between 500 and 1,300 euros a month, and they're being threatened with 20% cuts on jobs. Not an exciting prospect. So you can't help but understand why there's still a lot of frustration when you push people to the limit like that in Spain. I think more broadly this is a reflection of what still is happening in Spain. There's still a lot of problems with debts and bank debts, etc. And it's going to take a long time before the Spanish economy really turns around. We have seen the start of capital inflows into Spain, so certainly some shrewd investors, in particular the Americans actually, are starting to show up in Spain because they see this as a value opportunity now that the American economy is powering ahead. So investors are coming, but it's going to take years before that translates into meaningful amounts of jobs.
El País talks about the deal that's been struck between the street cleaners and the union. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because they have agreed to withdraw the huge number of layoffs, and they've reduced that quite significantly. But those staying to work as street cleaners have to take on, for the next 4 years, temporary furloughs of 45 days, during which they can get unemployment benefits and what have you. Just explain how that works. They're just basically not going to work for 45 days of their year
that's
and
right.
Not be paid during that time.
And not be paid.
It's quite an interesting deal, isn't it?
It is an interesting deal, and I guess that's because there's not so much money to go around, so it's guided by necessity. And on top of that, there's also a hiring freeze and a salary increase freeze all the way to 2017. So pretty tough conditions if you think about it, and yet you still got to get up early in the morning to sweep the streets.
Difficult.
Yet still have a job. I mean, that's the thing that everyone's weighing up. Let's talk about the Financial Times front page. So the EU bank watchdog is pleading for some kind of assessment, some kind of deal, but not everyone is agreeing in the way that this watchdog should be working.
No, I used to work in the European Commission, in the cabinet of the Vice President.
Did you enjoy it?
So I enjoyed it very much. But unfortunately, it is sometimes a little bit of a bureaucracy. And I guess when it comes to financial...
Is that an understatement?
Well...
You get the impression there's a lot of bureaucracy there.
But certainly it is important that you have flexibility and not just committee after committee after committee meeting. But the problem is when you have states getting together, particularly on sensitive issues such as monetary policy, there is a desire, and we know this in Britain for sure, to keep a bit of the autonomy. What is interesting in this particular article is that this time it's Germany. Germany wants to retain their veto power, and therefore they like the committee setup, and that's the interesting angle on that one. And that goes back to history. That's just since the Deutschmark. They've always wanted to retain their control on monetary policy just to keep the inflation down, because they don't want to go back to how it used to be in the 30s.
Now let's talk about Boeing. Wall Street Journal. Boeing sets record debut with its 777. plane, which is formally launched at the Dubai Air Show, and the orders are just flooding in, aren't they? It would seem that they're incredibly popular in the Middle East. Tell us more about this, because this is nearly $100 billion worth of business for Boeing. It's pretty nifty, isn't it?
That's right, it's huge. 259 airplanes, new airplanes being ordered here, so it's massive. But think about it also, the Arab world has got some of the biggest airlines now. And they've got
a lot of money as well.
And they've got a lot of cash. And what they have done is, particularly those of the countries like Dubai, where you see the oil will run out at some point, they have managed successfully to convert their economies into tourism hubs. And what they've really managed to capitalize as well is their central location. I mean, they are sort of between Asia, Europe, etc. And Boeing has really gone all the way out in terms of fuel efficiency, making those planes specific for the heat. It's obviously very hot down there, and they've gone all the way out to incorporate the airliners into the design, as well as make sure that the airlines can actually fly extra far, which is very helpful if you're based down there and you do a lot of these long-haul flights. So well done in terms of collaboration from Boeing. They've really integrated their customers into the design process here, and quite successfully.
In the same region, in Qatar, the heat actually is a major issue when we're taking a look ahead of the 2022 World Cup. And there is still the issue that Amnesty is now raising of how workers are being treated, and this is being taken a look at in The Guardian.
Historically, it's been a bit of an issue in the whole region. It's not just Qatar. Qatar is just in the spotlight right now because of the World Cup and all the preparations going ahead. And Sepp Blatter has been highlighting this particular issue, and rightly so, because it is a big issue. He's been forced to, though. FIFA has been forced to acknowledge there's a problem. Yeah, absolutely, because you can't have those sort of conditions when you're building for the World Cup. The problem here is that the implementation of the regulation. There is regulation in place. You can only work maximum 10 hours a day, and you have to take a break in the middle of the day when the heat is at most. But it's subcontracted out to contractors, and it's not implemented correctly.
Now, The Times, child abuse videos will be wiped from the web. This has to be good news, doesn't it? Certainly it's good news, but it's not sufficient. There's still a lot of peer-to-peer sharing going on, sort of off Google searches, etc. So it is certainly to be welcomed. It's an absolutely awful thing, and it's great that some of the American search companies have taken the step in that direction, but it's insufficient. The police still needs to keep a close eye on what goes on the internet on a peer-to-peer basis. Taking a final look at the China Daily, Lanzhou is now introducing this odd-even licence plate system in an attempt to curb emissions. Explain to our viewers what this is about. Well, Lanzhou is a bit unfortunate because they've got a lot of industrial and polluting factories there, and Lanzhou is sitting down in a bit of a valley. So when all the pollution goes on and there's not a lot of wind, all the pollution stays around. So you have to do something about it, and therefore you basically have to allow certain cars in, the odd ones on odd days and the even ones on even days. And there was a system they introduced originally during the Beijing Olympics. So it's the same thing they've come up with. So it could just work. It could work. We'd have to come in on alternate days if we did that. That's all right, we can figure it out. Always a pleasure. Thanks very much, Sally, and I see you very soon. Bye-bye.